The screams always started the same way. Theron Drake woke with his hands already reaching for the sword that was not there, lungs burning as if he had been running for miles instead of lying motionless in silk sheets that cost more than most men earned in a year. Sweat soaked through his nightclothes, pooling in the hollow of his throat. The darkness of his chamber pressed against him like a living thing, and for 3 racing heartbeats he was 26 years old again, standing in a forest that smelled of pine and blood and burning flesh. Iron wood, always iron wood. He sat up slowly, forcing air into his chest with the deliberate control of a man who had learned that panic was a luxury he could not afford. Moonlight spilled through the tall windows of his chambers, painting everything in shades of silver and shadow. Outside, the southern kingdom slept in the false peace that only the ignorant could enjoy. They did not know their king woke screaming 3 nights out of 7. They did not know the wolf inside him had been broken for 3 years, shattered like glass against stone, leaving only jagged pieces that cut him from the inside. The nightmares never lied. They showed him exactly what had happened. 400 soldiers, good men, men who had followed him into those woods because they believed in honor and duty in the oaths they had sworn, men who had trusted that their young king and his mentor would lead them home. Theron closed his eyes and saw their faces, all of them, every single one. He had memorized them in the weeks after the massacre, forced himself to look at the lists, to learn their names, to understand the weight of what his failure had cost. And Corvus, always Corvus at the center of it all. The man who had trained him from the age of 10. The man who had taught him to shift, to fight, to lead. The man who had stood at his father's side for 20 years, loyal and steady as the northern star. The man who had looked Theron in the eyes as he ripped apart the soldiers who trusted them both and smiled while he did it. Theron rose from the bed and walked to the window, bare feet silent on cold stone. His reflection stared back at him from the glass, and he barely recognized the man he saw. 29 years old, Alpha King of the Southern Kingdom, alone in every way that mattered. His wolf stirred inside him, a broken thing that whimpered instead of growled. It had been that way since Iron Wood, since the moment Corvus had done something, some dark magic or curse or simple brutality that Theron still did not understand, that had shattered the connection between man and beast. He could feel the wolf there, trapped and terrified, but when he reached for it, when he tried to shift, his body locked up in agony. Bones would begin to crack and reform only to snap back. Muscles would tear and heal and tear again. The pain was exquisite and endless, and after a while, even the wolf had learned to be afraid. A broken king, a broken wolf, leading a broken kingdom that pretended everything was fine. Theron pressed his forehead against the cool glass and breathed. Outside his door, he heard the soft footsteps he had been waiting for. Not a servant, not a guard. The tread was too measured, too familiar. Marcus Flint always knew when the nightmares came. The door opened without a knock. Marcus entered carrying 2 glasses and a bottle of whiskey that was older than both of them. He said nothing. He never did. He simply crossed to the window, set the glasses down on the stone sill, and poured with the steady hands of a man who had done this ritual too many times to count. They drank in silence. The whiskey burned going down, a clean fire that had nothing to do with the phantom flames Theron still saw when he closed his eyes. Marcus was his beta, his second, the only other man who had walked out of Ironwood alive, and that survival had carved something hollow in him too. Theron could see it in the way Marcus held himself, in the careful distance he maintained even now, as if he were afraid that standing too close might somehow taint Theron with whatever guilt Marcus carried. Finally Marcus spoke. His voice was rough like gravel under boots. Hadrian's messenger came at sundown. Theron took another swallow of whiskey. The Northern Alliance. Marcus nodded. The marriage arrangement is still on the table. Princess Isolde Ashford, strategic match, strong borders, trade routes we need. Theron said nothing. His father would have wanted this. His father had spent the last year of his life negotiating this alliance, trying to secure the kingdom's future before the sickness took him. Theron had inherited a crown and a promise he was not sure he could keep. There is something else, Marcus continued. His tone shifted, became flatter, more careful. Intelligence suggests Corvus was last seen near the northern border, 6 weeks ago, headed toward Hadrian's territory. The glass in Theron's hand cracked. Not shattered, just a thin fracture running from rim to base, a line of weakness waiting to break. He set it down slowly. You think he is there? I think he is always 3 steps ahead of us. Marcus's jaw tightened. I think he knows we are coming. And I think this alliance is both our best chance to find him and our greatest risk. Theron looked at his beta, his brother in all the ways that mattered. Marcus had been there at Iron Wood, had fought beside him, had survived when so many others had not. And that survival had built a wall between them made of guilt and shame and unspoken words that neither of them knew how to tear down. We ride north in 3 days, Theron said. Prepare the men. Marcus nodded once and turned to leave. At the door he paused. Your father would want you to heal. This marriage, it might help. My father is dead because I was too weak to see betrayal standing right beside me. Theron's voice came out colder than he intended, and I am still too weak to avenge him. The door closed softly. Theron was alone again with his ghosts. 200 miles to the north, in a castle that had stood for 500 years, Rhea Brennan walked the ramparts under a moon that cast the same silver light that illuminated Theron's sleepless vigil. She moved in silence. It was a habit born from childhood, from the years when making noise meant being noticed, and being noticed meant being sent back to the kitchens or the laundry or any of the 100 other places where orphans belonged. Even now, 12 years after the night that had destroyed her world, Rhea could not shake the instinct to move through spaces as if she did not exist. Her boots made no sound on stone. Her breath formed small clouds in the cold night air. She checked every shadow, every corner, every place where someone could hide. It was obsessive. She knew it was obsessive. But the alternative was closing her eyes and seeing her parents die again, and that was a price she would not pay. The castle slept around her. Guards stood at their posts, half drowsing despite their best efforts. Servants had retreated to their quarters hours ago. Princess Isolde was safe in her chambers, locked behind 3 sets of guards and 2 locked doors, and Rhea had checked each one personally before beginning her patrol. She stopped at the eastern tower and looked out over the kingdom. Farmland stretched in every direction, peaceful and prosperous, and completely ignorant of the monsters that walked among them. Rhea had learned about monsters when she was 12 years old. The memories came without warning. They always did. She had been hiding in the cupboard. A stupid place, obvious, but she had been a child and fear had made her foolish. She had pressed herself into the darkness behind old linens and broken crockery and tried not to breathe while the screaming filled the house. Her mother first. Rhea heard her mother's voice, strong and defiant until the very end, shouting something that might have been a warning or a curse or simply a final prayer. Then the wet sound of tearing, of breaking, of ending. Her father had lasted longer. Thomas Brennan had been a soldier, a man who knew how to fight, how to survive. Rhea heard him struggling, heard furniture breaking, heard his voice rising in desperate fury. He was calling for someone, a name she did not recognize then but had spent 12 years searching for. Theron Drake, find Theron Drake. Tell him Thomas Brennan's debt is paid. Then silence. The kind of silence that comes after life has fled and only meat remains. The cupboard door had opened slowly. Rhea had stared up at the monster through a crack in the wood, too terrified to even whimper. He was a man, or had been once. Tall, powerfully built, eyes that reflected light like an animal's. Blood covered his hands, his arms, his chest, her parents' blood. He had looked directly at her hiding place. She knew he saw her, knew he could have reached in and ended her just as easily as he had ended them. But instead, he smiled. A terrible smile that showed too many teeth. "Not worth it," the monster had said. His voice was cultured, almost gentle. "You are nothing, remember that." Then he had walked away, leaving her alive in a house full of death. Rhea had run until her lungs burned and her legs gave out. Run until she collapsed on the road to the capital, half dead from exposure and grief. King Hadrian's men had found her at dawn. They brought her to the castle, fed her, clothed her. And when she begged them to find Theron Drake to deliver her father's message, they told her gently that Lord Drake had died months earlier in some southern war. So Rhea had stayed, learned to survive in a new way. Princess Isolde had taken pity on her, given her work, given her purpose. And when Rhea saved the princess from bandits at 15, using nothing but a kitchen knife and the desperate fury of someone who had already lost everything, Isolde had given her something more. The chance to become strong, to train, to learn to fight so that she would never hide in a cupboard again. Now Rhea was 24. She was the princess's personal guard, one of the best fighters in the kingdom, and she had not slept through a full night since she was 12 years old. A raven called somewhere in the darkness. Rhea's hand dropped to the dagger at her waist before she consciously registered the movement. Just a bird, just the wind, just shadows. But her heart hammered anyway, because monsters were real and they wore human faces, and 12 years had not been long enough to forget. The drums sounded at dawn. Rhea heard them from her small chamber adjacent to the princess's rooms and was on her feet before the second beat. Drums meant riders. Drums meant arrivals. She dressed quickly, efficiently. Leather trousers reinforced at the knees, dark tunic that allowed free movement, boots that could run or fight with equal ease, hair pulled back and braided tight against her skull, weapons secured. She checked her reflection in the small mirror and saw a woman who looked like she was preparing for battle instead of greeting diplomatic guests. Good. By the time she reached the courtyard, half the castle had already gathered. Servants whispered excitedly. Guards stood at attention with the rigid formality of men trying to impress. King Hadrian himself had emerged from his council chambers, looking older than Rhea remembered. The weight of ruling showed in the lines around his eyes, in the stoop of his shoulders. Princess Isolde stood at her father's side, radiant in a gown of deep green that made her golden hair shine like spun sunlight. She was 23, beautiful, and kind in the way that people who have never truly suffered can afford to be. Rhea loved her as much as she had loved anyone since her parents died. Isolde was safety, stability, the closest thing to family Rhea had left. The princess caught her eye and smiled. Rhea moved to stand behind her, taking up her position without needing to be told. This was her place, her purpose. The gates opened, the procession entered. Rhea saw the banners first, black wolves on silver fields. Her breath caught in her throat. Her vision tunneled. 12 years collapsed into a single moment of recognition, so fierce it felt like being struck. Drake, the Drake family crest. But Theron Drake was dead. Everyone said so. He had fallen in some battle down south, heroic and young and mourned by those who knew him. Rhea had given up searching for him years ago, had accepted that her father's final message would die undelivered. The riders dismounted with military precision. 20 men, all armed, all moving with the dangerous confidence of soldiers who had seen real combat. They formed up in two lines, creating a corridor, and through that corridor walked two men who made everyone else in the courtyard seem somehow less real. The first was broad and scarred, built like a stone wall given human form. His eyes swept the courtyard with the assessing gaze of someone who catalogued threats the way other people noticed weather. A warrior, a survivor. Rhea recognized the type because she saw it every time she looked in a mirror. The second man made her heart stop. He was tall, powerfully built, dark hair touched with premature gray at the temples, a face that might have been handsome if not for the hardness carved into every line, the weight that seemed to bow his shoulders even as he stood straight. He moved like a man in pain, like every step cost him something he could not afford to give. But it was his eyes that made Rhea certain, dark eyes that held the same haunted quality she saw in her own reflection, eyes that had seen things they could not forget. Thomas Brennan's eyes. Her father's eyes, reflected in the face of a stranger. No, not a stranger. Theron Drake was alive. Rhea moved without thinking, pushed through the crowd of servants and courtiers, ignoring the hands that tried to stop her, ignoring protocol and propriety and everything except the burning need to reach him, to deliver the message that had waited 12 years, to fulfill her father's last wish. Lord Drake. Her voice came out stronger than she expected, loud enough to cut through the murmur of the crowd. The guards moved to intercept her, but the dark-eyed man held up one hand. Let her through. His voice was rough, deep, the voice of someone who had spent too long screaming and now had to ration words carefully. The guards hesitated, then stepped aside. Rhea stopped 3 paces away from him. Up close, she could see the scars. Not many, but deep. The kind that came from claws and teeth rather than blades. She could see the way he held himself, weight slightly favored to the right, protecting something that had never fully healed. She could see the absolute exhaustion in his eyes, the kind of tired that sleep would never fix. Thomas Brennan. Her voice cracked on her father's name. Did you know him? The effect was immediate and devastating. Theron Drake went rigid. The broad man beside him, the one with the warrior's eyes, stepped forward with his hand on his sword. The air in the courtyard changed, became charged with sudden tension. Theron Drake stared at her, through her. His face had gone completely blank, the kind of blank that comes from shock too great to process. Tommy Brennan was my brother in everything but blood. His voice was barely above a whisper. He died at Ironwood 3 years ago. Who are you? Rhea felt the world tilt. 3 years. Her father had been dead for 3 years and she had not known. Had spent those years training and fighting and surviving, all in the service of delivering a message to a man who had already lost the person it was meant to protect. I am his daughter. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to stop. Theron Drake's face crumbled, just for a moment, just long enough for Rhea to see the grief there, raw and bleeding as if the wound had been opened yesterday instead of 3 years ago. You were supposed to be dead. His words came out jagged. Tommy said his family died in the epidemic. He said there was nothing left. My father lied to protect me. Rhea's hands were shaking. She clenched them into fists. Before he died, he sent me north, told me to find Theron Drake, told me to tell you his debt was paid. The broad man swore softly. Theron Drake closed his eyes, and Rhea watched something break behind his face. When he opened his eyes again, they were wet. Your father saved my life when I was 14 years old, took a blade meant for me. The wound festered, killed him slowly over months. I held his hand while he died and swore I would protect his family. His voice broke, and I failed him, failed you. You did not know I existed. That does not make the failure any less real. They stood in the courtyard surrounded by witnesses, two people bound together by a dead man's sacrifice, and Rhea understood with sudden clarity that Theron Drake carried his ghosts the same way she did, chained to his back, weighing him down, defining every choice. The broad man stepped forward, breaking the moment. Marcus Flint, his voice was steady, controlled, beta to the Southern King, and you are. Rhea Brennan, personal guard to Princess Isolde. Marcus's eyebrows rose fractionally. Tommy would have wanted you safe, protected, not standing guard. Rhea met his gaze without flinching. My father is not here to want anything. I choose my own path. Theron Drake made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. He looked at her with something like recognition, like he saw himself reflected in her defiance. You have his eyes, every word seemed to cost him, and his stubbornness. Before Rhea could respond, King Hadrian cleared his throat, reminding everyone that this was supposed to be a formal diplomatic arrival, not a reunion. Protocol reasserted itself. Introductions were made, pleasantries exchanged. Theron Drake was escorted toward the guest chambers with the appropriate ceremony for a visiting king. But as he passed, he stopped beside Rhea one more time. We will speak. His voice was low, meant only for her, about Tommy, about what he would have wanted for you. Rhea nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She watched him walk away, this man her father had died trying to protect, and felt something shift inside her chest. The message had been delivered, the debt acknowledged, but instead of closure, she felt only the beginning of something she did not yet have words for. That night the castle prepared for a welcome feast. Rhea dressed in her formal guard uniform, dark leather polished to a gleam, weapons secured but visible. She took up her position behind Princess Isolde's chair in the great hall and tried to ignore the way her eyes kept finding Theron Drake across the room. He sat at the high table beside King Hadrian and Princess Isolde, picking at his food with the disinterest of someone who had forgotten what it meant to have an appetite. Marcus Flint sat at his right hand, watchful as a hawk. They spoke little. When they did, it was in the shorthand of men who had fought together long enough that words became unnecessary. Rhea studied them, tried to understand what kind of bond would make a man drop everything to follow another into diplomatic negotiations that could easily be a trap, tried to understand what her father had seen in Theron Drake that had made him ride south to die beside him. The feast continued, wine flowed, courtiers laughed at jokes that were not funny, and through it all, Rhea felt the tension building like a storm about to break. It broke at midnight. The first scream came from the eastern corridor. Rhea was moving before the sound fully registered, instinct overriding thought. She sprinted from the great hall, aware of other guards following, aware of shouting behind her. She rounded the corner and stopped. 3 bodies, castle guards, throats torn out, blood everywhere. And standing in the corridor, 3 figures in black with silver masks that reflected torchlight like mirror glass. Assassins. Rhea drew her daggers and charged. No thought, no plan, just the muscle memory of thousands of hours of training taking over. She ducked under the first blade, spun inside the second assassin's guard, drove her knife up under his ribs, twisted, pulled free, moved. The second assassin was faster. His blade scored her shoulder, a line of fire that she ignored. She blocked his next strike, pivoted, brought her knee up into his stomach. He doubled over. She finished him with a blade to the throat. The third assassin raised a crossbow. Rhea saw the bolt, saw the trajectory, saw where it was aimed. Not at her. Behind her, through the doorway. At the high table where Theron Drake stood, frozen in shock at the sudden violence, she threw her dagger without thinking. It spun end over end, caught the crossbow mid-trigger. The bolt fired wild, embedding itself in the wall 3 feet from Theron's head. And then Rhea was airborne, tackling Theron as more assassins poured into the hall from hidden passages. They crashed together behind a stone pillar, Rhea's weight driving them both into cover. On instinct, moving with the certainty of someone who had survived by knowing when to hide, she clamped her hand over Theron's mouth. His eyes went wide. His body tensed to fight, but she was already whispering, voice barely audible under the chaos of screaming and combat. "Quiet, or they will find us." Theron went still. She felt his breath hot against her palm, felt the rapid hammer of his heart against her chest where their bodies pressed together, felt something else, something that made her skin prickle with awareness she had no time to examine. His scent hit her, pine and leather, wood smoke and something wild underneath, something animal that should have terrified her but instead made her want to lean closer. She pulled her hand back slightly. His eyes met hers. Gold flickered in the depths of his dark irises, the wolf trying to surface. She saw his jaw clench, saw the pain that flashed across his face as his body tried to shift and failed. He was broken, her father's savior, this king who should have been strong and whole, broken in ways she recognized because she was broken too. Footsteps pounded past their hiding place. Shouts echoed. The sounds of fighting filled the hall, and in their small pocket of shadow, Theron Drake and Rhea Brennan breathed in unison, 2 people who had survived by knowing how to be silent while death walked past. Finally, Theron moved his head slightly, enough to dislodge her hand. His whisper was nearly inaudible. "Stay down, that is an order." Rhea's response was immediate and visceral. She bit down on his hand, not hard enough to draw blood but hard enough to make her point. Theron jerked back, shock clear on his face. Rhea's whisper came out fierce. "There is no man alive who commands me." For a heartbeat they stared at each other, then something shifted in Theron's expression. Recognition, understanding, maybe even respect. The moment shattered as Marcus Flint appeared in the doorway, fully shifted into a massive gray wolf that moved with lethal grace. He took down 2 assassins before they could react, teeth finding throats with surgical precision. Theron tried to stand, tried to shift to help his beta. Rhea saw his whole body convulse, saw him gasp in agony as his bones started to crack and then snapped back into human form, saw him collapse against the pillar, face gray with pain. She made a choice. Rhea exploded from cover. She moved through the chaos like a blade through water, dispatching the remaining assassins with the brutal efficiency of someone who had learned to kill before the age of 13. Her training took over. Her trauma made her faster, stronger, more willing to do whatever was necessary to survive. When the last body fell, silence returned to the hall, broken only by harsh breathing and the drip of blood on stone. Marcus shifted back to human form, accepting a cloak from one of the guards. He looked at Theron, still leaning against the pillar, and something passed between them. Grief, frustration, brotherhood. King Hadrian emerged from behind the high table, face pale but steady. "Seize any survivors, find out who sent them." One assassin still lived, pinned under a fallen banner. Guards hauled him to his feet. Marcus crossed the hall in 3 strides and grabbed the man by the throat. "Who paid you?" The assassin laughed. Blood flecked his lips. "You think this ends here? Corvus sends his regards, Drake. He will finish what he started at Iron Wood." Theron moved. Despite his pain, despite his damaged wolf, he crossed the space between them faster than Rhea could track. His hand closed around the assassin's throat beside Marcus's. "Where is he?" The assassin smiled. "Closer than you think." Then he bit down on something hidden in his teeth. Poison. He died choking on it, still smiling. The name hung in the air like smoke. Corvus. Rhea saw the way Theron flinched at the sound of it, saw Marcus's hand tighten into a fist, saw the grief and rage and helplessness wash over both men in waves. She understood then. This Corvus, whoever he was the monster that haunted them both. Just like he was the monster that had killed her parents. In the aftermath, guards sealed the castle. King Hadrian called for healers and investigators. Marcus disappeared with a contingent of soldiers to search for more hidden passages, and Theron Drake stood in the blood-soaked hall, staring at nothing. Rhea approached him carefully. His shoulder bore a shallow cut from where an assassin had gotten too close. Blood seeped through his formal jacket. "You are injured." He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. "I am always injured." "That is not an answer." "It is the only one I have." She pulled a strip of cloth from her own sleeve, the emergency bandage every guard carried, stepped close enough to smell pine and leather again, close enough to see the fine tremor in his hands. "Let me." He did not resist, did not speak, just watched her with those dark, haunted eyes as she cleaned the wound and bound it with practiced efficiency. Her fingers brushed his skin and she felt him flinch, not from pain, from contact. "How long has it been?" She kept her voice low. "Since ironwood, since you could shift properly." 3 years, 2 months, 14 days. The precision of his answer told her everything. He counted his brokenness the way she counted the years since her parents died. "My father rode to stand with you," her hands stilled on the bandage, "rode to die with you at Ironwood." "Why?" "Because I asked him to." Theron's voice was hollow. "Because I was young and stupid and thought I could trust the man who trained me. Thought Corvus Kane was loyal. Thought I could lead soldiers into those woods and bring them home." Corvus Kane. Rhea repeated the name, testing it. "This is the same man who sent assassins tonight. The same man who betrayed us at Ironwood. The same man who killed 400 soldiers, including your father. The same man who shattered my wolf and left me alive to suffer." His jaw clenched. "He is my mentor, or was, the man I loved like a father." "Why did he betray you?" "I do not know." And Theron looked at her with such raw pain that Rhea nearly stepped back. "I have spent 3 years trying to understand, trying to find him, trying to end this. And all I have learned is that everyone I love dies screaming." The silence stretched between them. Rhea finished tying the bandage. "My father's last words were about you." She pulled back, met his eyes. "He said to tell you his debt was paid. Do you know what that meant?" Theron exhaled slowly. "When I was 14, I fell during training. Would have been killed. Tommy threw himself between me and the blade, took the wound in my place. It festered, killed him over months. I sat with him at the end and swore I would repay what he gave." "So you asked him to ride to Ironwood?" "I gave him a choice." Theron's voice broke. "He chose to come, chose honor over safety, and it killed him. That was his choice to make. It was my responsibility to keep him safe." They stared at each other. Two people carrying the weight of the same man's sacrifice. Two people trying to survive grief that had no end. "I am assigning you to my personal security detail." Theron spoke suddenly, formally. "For the duration of my visit. I owe your father that much." Rhea stiffened. "I do not need your pity." "It is not pity, it is debt, and I always pay my debts." He walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing in the blood-soaked hall with questions burning in her chest and the phantom feeling of his skin under her fingers. The next morning, Marcus found evidence that made everything worse. The assassins had entered through passages that only long-time castle residents would know. Someone inside Hadrian's court had helped them. Someone who knew the guard rotations, knew where Theron would be sitting, knew exactly how to strike. A council was called. King Hadrian, Theron, Marcus, Princess Isolde, and Rhea as the princess's guard. They gathered in a secured chamber while outside, the castle buzzed with fear and suspicion. 5 members of my inner council arrived within the last 3 years. Hadrian looked older than he had yesterday. Any of them could be Corvus's agent. The steward Owen, the treasurer, the master of arms, the trade minister, the captain of the night watch, all came to the court after that massacre in the south. Or Corvus himself. Marcus leaned against the wall, arms crossed. He is a shifter, an alpha. He can mask his scent, change his appearance enough to pass as human for years. You think he has been here all along? Isolde's voice trembled slightly. In our home. I think he is always exactly where he needs to be. Marcus's tone was grim. Owen has been particularly careful. No past before he arrived. No family, no connections, too perfect. Rhea listened to them debate and felt pieces clicking together in her mind. The monster who killed her parents had been cultured, educated, had moved through her home with the confidence of someone familiar with such places, had known exactly where to find her father. This Corvus Kane, she said slowly. What does he look like? The room went quiet. Theron closed his eyes. Tall, dark hair going gray, strong build, eyes that shift color depending on mood, scars on his left forearm from a training accident 20 years ago. He paused, and a voice like honey over gravel, educated, gentle, until he decides to stop pretending. Rhea's blood turned to ice. That was the monster from her childhood, exactly. He killed my parents. The words dropped into the room like stones into still water. Everyone turned to stare at her. Theron's eyes snapped open. What? 12 years ago, a man matching that description murdered my mother and father in our home. I was hiding. He found me, looked at me, and walked away. She swallowed hard, said I was not worth killing. Theron stood so abruptly his chair fell backward. Marcus straightened from the wall. Even Hadrian looked shocked. You saw Corvus Kane and survived. Marcus's voice was sharp. You are the only living witness to his face. I was 12. Rhea fought to keep her voice steady. I do not know if I could identify him now. But you might. Theron crossed to her in 3 strides. If you saw him again, you might recognize him. She met his gaze and saw desperation there. Hope. The first glimmer of it she had seen in him since they met. Maybe. Then we hunt together. His words came out fierce. You and I, we find the man who killed your parents and my brothers. We end this. Your Majesty, Hadrian cleared his throat. You are here for diplomatic negotiations, for the alliance, for marriage to my daughter. The alliance can wait. Theron did not look away from Rhea. This cannot. The tension in the room shifted. Isolde made a small sound, quickly suppressed. Hadrian's face darkened. But it was Marcus who spoke, voice heavy with meaning. Brother, remember why we came north. Remember what we promised your advisors. Theron finally broke eye contact with Rhea, looked at his beta, and in that look Rhea saw an entire conversation happen without words. Duty, responsibility, the weight of a crown and a kingdom. When Theron spoke again, his voice was controlled, diplomatic. Of course, the alliance comes first, but I would still request Rhea Brennan be assigned to my security detail. She has proven her worth. Hadrian nodded slowly. If Princess Isolde agrees to spare her. Isolde looked between Theron and Rhea, and something flickered across her face too quickly to identify. Then she smiled. "Of course, Father. Anything to ensure our guest's safety." It was decided. Rhea would guard the man her father had died protecting, would stand close to the broken king and try not to notice the way her pulse quickened when he was near, would hunt the monster who had made them both. And none of them noticed the way Isolde's hands trembled as she left the chamber. None of them saw her pause in the empty corridor outside and press one palm to her stomach with an expression of absolute terror. None of them knew she was already carrying Corvus Kane's child. The training yard smelled of sweat and leather, and the particular kind of determination that came from refusing to quit even when every muscle screamed for mercy. Rhea blocked the overhead strike, pivoted on her back foot, and drove her practice blade toward Theron's ribs with enough force to bruise if it connected. It did not connect. Theron moved like water, flowing around her attack despite the visible limp in his right leg, despite the way his breathing came harder than it should. He caught her wrist mid-thrust, twisted just enough to lock the joint, and had her off balance before she could compensate. She hit the packed dirt hard. Breath exploded from her lungs. Above her, Theron offered his hand. Again. Rhea ignored the hand and rolled to her feet, practice blade already coming up in a defensive guard. Her shoulder throbbed where she had landed, but the pain was distant, unimportant. What mattered was understanding how he moved, how he anticipated, how a king with a damaged body could still fight like something more than human. They had been at this for 3 days. Every morning after dawn, Theron would appear in the training yard and demand she spar with him. Not to teach her, though he corrected her form when it slipped. Not to prove his dominance, though he could end any exchange whenever he chose. He fought her like he was trying to solve a puzzle, like each strike and parry brought him closer to understanding something he could not name. Marcus watched from the fence line, silent as always, keeping count of falls and near misses in the complicated arithmetic that governed his loyalty to his king. Your guard drops when you commit to a thrust. Theron circled her slowly, practice blade held loosely in his right hand. You rely on speed to recover. Against most opponents that works. Against a shifter you die. Then teach me not to die. Something flickered across his face. Respect maybe, or recognition. He lunged without warning, a strike aimed at her throat that would have killed her if the blade had been steel instead of wood. Rhea barely blocked it. The impact sent shock waves up her arm. She gave ground, deflecting rather than meeting his strength directly, looking for the opening she knew had to be there because everyone had weaknesses, even kings. She found it, a fraction of a second where his weight shifted wrong, where his right leg took strain it could not fully support. She swept low, aiming for the damaged knee. Theron saw it coming, started to counter, and then his body betrayed him. The shift began involuntarily. Rhea saw his eyes flash gold, saw his jaw elongate, teeth sharpening into fangs, heard the wet crack of bones starting to break and reform. But instead of the smooth transformation that should have made him faster, stronger, deadly, his body locked up mid-change. Theron collapsed. The sound he made was not quite human. Pain and frustration and rage all compressed into a single agonized gasp. His hands clawed at the dirt, fingers caught between human and wolf, neither one nor the other. Muscles spasmed beneath skin. Bones ground against each other in ways they were never meant to move. Rhea dropped her practice blade and went to her knees beside him. She had seen this before, 3 times now in the days since the assassination attempt. Each time Theron's instincts took over. Each time his wolf tried to answer. Each time his body tore itself apart trying to complete a transformation that would not come. Do not touch him. Marcus was already vaulting the fence, moving with the liquid speed of someone whose wolf worked perfectly. When a shifter is caught mid-change, contact can make it worse. Rhea pulled back her hand, fingers inches from Theron's shoulder. She watched helplessly as the king of the southern kingdom shook like a man being pulled apart from the inside. It lasted 30 seconds, maybe less. Time became elastic when pain was involved. But finally, with a sound like branches snapping, Theron's body gave up trying to shift and slammed him back into fully human form. He stayed on his hands and knees, breathing in great ragged gasps. Blood trickled from his nose. When he finally looked up, his eyes were dark again, human again, and filled with a humiliation that made Rhea want to look away. Marcus crouched beside his king, said nothing, did not offer comfort because they both knew words would not help. He simply stayed close, a silent presence that said you are not alone in this. After a long moment, Theron pushed himself to his feet, wiped the blood from his face with the back of his hand, met Rhea's gaze with an expression she could not read. Enough for today. He walked away before either of them could respond, not toward the guest chambers, toward the stables, toward anywhere that was not here, not watched, not witnessed. Marcus stood slowly. He looked at Rhea with eyes that had seen too much and never forgotten any of it. 3 years of this. His voice was flat. Every time his instincts override control, he breaks a little more. Is there no healer who can help him? We have tried everything. Magic, medicine, prayer. Marcus picked up the dropped practice blades, turned them over in his hands. The problem is not his body, it is what Corvus did, and we do not know how to fix what we do not understand. Rhea watched Theron's retreating figure disappear into the stable. She thought about her father, who had ridden to stand beside this man. Thought about Tommy Brennan choosing honor over safety. What happened at Ironwood? She kept her voice low. Marcus was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. When he finally spoke, his words came carefully measured. Corvus led us into a trap. 400 men died, Tommy among them. He paused. And something Corvus did broke Theron's wolf. We have been trying to heal it ever since. Rhea heard what he did not say. The guilt, the weight of surviving when so many others had not. You blame yourself. Every day, Marcus met her eyes. I chose to save Theron instead of Tommy. That choice haunts me. Tommy made his own choice, to stand with his brothers. Knowing that does not make the guilt any lighter, Marcus set down the practice blades, but Theron carries it worse. 400 names. He remembers every one. Rhea felt something cold settle in her chest. The monster who killed her parents had said the same thing to her. Not worth it. You are nothing. Leaving her alive had been its own kind of torture. Corvus is cruel. Corvus is patient. Marcus corrected. Everything he does serves a purpose. That assassination attempt was not meant to kill Theron. It was meant to remind him that nowhere is safe. Rhea looked toward the stables again. Thought about Theron alone with his shame and his damaged wolf, and 3 years of failure he could not escape. He should not be alone right now. Marcus studied her. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite approval, but close. No, he should not. She found him in the back of the stables, in an empty stall that smelled of hay and horse and old leather. He sat with his back against the wooden wall, knees drawn up, head tilted back against the planks. His eyes were closed. Blood had dried on his upper lip in a dark line. Rhea stopped at the stall door. She could leave, should leave. This was not her concern, not her burden to carry. But her father had loved this man enough to die for him, and Tommy Brennan had not been the kind of man who gave his loyalty to those unworthy of it. She stepped into the stall, closed the gate behind her, sat down against the opposite wall, mirroring his posture. Theron did not open his eyes. You do not have to be here. I know. Then why are you? Because 12 years ago, a monster looked at me and decided I was not worth killing. She kept her voice steady, and I have spent every day since then trying to prove him wrong, trying to become strong enough that the next time death comes, I can face it without hiding. Theron opened his eyes, looked at her, really looked the way he had when she first told him she was Tommy's daughter. Corvus. Yes. He did the same to me. Left me alive because killing me would have been too kind. His voice was rough. Every day I wake up and remember that I am not strong enough, that my wolf will not answer when I call, that I failed every man who trusted me, and every day I have to pretend to be a king worth following. The silence between them was heavy with shared understanding. Two people shaped by the same cruelty. Two people trying to survive the weight of being deemed unworthy of death. This morning, Rhea said carefully, when you tried to shift, I felt something. What? I do not know. She frowned, trying to put sensation into words. When you started to change for just a second, something inside me responded, like recognition, like an answer to a question I did not know I was asking. Theron's gaze sharpened. Your father was human, not a shifter. I know, but my mother's family. She searched her memory for fragments her father had mentioned. There were stories, old blood, gifts that skipped generations, nothing concrete, just whispers. What kind of gifts? Rhea shook her head. I do not remember. I was too young. And after they died, there was no one left to ask. Theron was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned forward slightly, intensity radiating from him. When I was trying to shift, you said you felt something. Could you feel my wolf? Not exactly. More like I could feel you fighting it, fighting yourself. She struggled to explain, and I wanted to help, wanted to tell you it was safe. Show me. What? Come here, let me try again. If you can feel it, maybe you can help me control it. Theron, that is not safe. Marcus said contact during a failed shift makes it worse. Marcus is not always right. Theron held out his hand, please. Rhea looked at his outstretched palm, saw the scars across his knuckles, saw the fine tremor he could not quite hide, saw the desperate hope in his eyes that was more painful than any wound. She took his hand. His skin was warm, calloused from sword work. The contact sent a jolt through her that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with the simple fact of touch, of connection, of choosing to reach across the space between people who were both so used to being alone. Theron closed his eyes, took a breath, reached for his wolf. Rhea felt it immediately, the animal inside him stirring, responding to his call. But there was something else there too, something dark and tangled, wrapped around the connection between man and beast like barbed wire around a living thing. When Theron tried to push through it, pain lanced through the bond. Rhea gasped. Her free hand went to her chest, feeling the echo of his agony like a phantom wound. Stop, you are hurting yourself. I can almost. Theron's voice strained just a little more. No, she squeezed his hand hard. Whatever Corvus did to you, it has roots. Pushing harder will only drive them deeper. How do you know that? I do not, Rhea admitted, but I can feel it. Feel how it wraps around your wolf like chains, and chains do not break from brute force. They need a key. Theron opened his eyes, looked at their joined hands, a key. Or someone to pick the lock. Are you offering? I do not know if I can, but my father died trying to protect you. The least I can do is try to help you heal. Something passed across Theron's face. gratitude, relief, and underneath it all, a loneliness so profound it made Rhea's chest ache. "Thank you. Do not thank me yet. I have no idea what I am doing." "Neither do I." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "We can fail together." They sat in the hay-strewn stall as afternoon light slanted through the wooden slats, hands still joined, and began the slow work of learning how to trust. Marcus found the coded message 3 days later. He had been investigating the 5 council members who had arrived after Ironwood, tracking their movements, their correspondence, their habits. Most of it was innocent, boring, even. Letters to family, trade negotiations, the mundane business of running a kingdom. But Owen, Hadrian's steward, had a raven. Not unusual in itself. Many nobles kept birds for messages, but this raven only flew at night, only carried messages sealed with black wax bearing no house sigil, and Owen always burned the replies immediately after reading them. Marcus waited until Owen was occupied with inventory in the castle cellars. Then he broke into the man's chambers with the practiced ease of someone who had done this many times before. The room was sparse, carefully organized, nothing personal, nothing that spoke of the man who lived there. That was the first warning. People left traces, memories, small tokens of who they were. A room this clean belonged to someone who did not want to be known. Marcus found the letter tucked inside a hollowed book. The code was complex, layered, designed to resist casual inspection. But Marcus had been decoding enemy intelligence since he was 16. He worked through it with patient precision, and when the message finally revealed itself, his blood turned cold. The Ironwood anniversary approaches. Drake's wolf is weakest on the day of his breaking. Strike then. 10 days remain. Marcus read it 3 times, memorized every word, put everything back exactly as he had found it, left no trace of his presence. Then he went to find his king. Theron was in the armory, oiling his sword with the meditative focus of a man who needed the ritual more than the maintenance. Marcus closed the door behind him, locked it, set the letter on the workbench between them. Theron read it in silence. His jaw tightened with each line. When he finished, he set the paper down very carefully, as if sudden movement might make it more real. 10 days. The anniversary of Ironwood, Marcus confirmed. The day we lost 400 men, the day Corvus broke you. He is here. Theron's voice was flat in the castle, wearing someone's face. Owen is the most likely candidate, but we cannot be certain. Corvus is old, powerful. If he wanted to impersonate someone, he could maintain it for years. So we have 10 days to find him before he strikes again. Theron looked up. What does he want, Marcus? Why this elaborate game? To break you completely. Marcus said what they both knew. Killing you would be too quick. He wants to take everything first. Your wolf, your kingdom, your hope. Then, when there is nothing left, he will let you die knowing you failed everyone who ever trusted you. The words hung between them like smoke. Theron picked up his sword, tested the edge with his thumb. A thin line of blood welled up. Then we do not give him the satisfaction. His eyes met Marcus's. We set a trap. Use the anniversary memorial against him. You want to bait him out. I want to end this. Theron's voice hardened. 3 years I have been running, hiding, trying to heal, and he has been 3 steps ahead the entire time. No more, we bring the fight to him. That is suicide. Marcus kept his tone level. You cannot shift properly. In a direct confrontation, Corvus will kill you. Then we do not make it direct. Theron started to pace. We plan it. Use the memorial as cover. Make him think I am vulnerable, exposed. And when he strikes, we are ready. Ready how? What advantage do we have? Rhea. The name dropped into the room like a stone. Marcus stared at his king. Tommy's daughter. The only living person who saw Corvus's face and survived. The only one who might recognize him despite any disguise. Theron's pacing quickened. We put her in position. Visible, protected but seemingly vulnerable. If Corvus wants to hurt me, taking her would accomplish that. Avenging Tommy, proving even debts of honor cannot protect the people I care about. You are using her as bait. Marcus's voice held no judgment, just observation. I am giving her a choice. Theron stopped pacing. She has as much right to hunt him as we do. More, maybe. He killed her parents, left her to suffer. If she wants vengeance, she has earned it. And if she dies earning it. Then I add one more name to the list of people I failed to protect. Theron's expression was bleak, but I will not take her choice away. She deserves better than that. Marcus studied his king, saw the determination there, saw the guilt and the rage and the desperate need to finally end the thing that had been destroying them all for 3 years. I will begin preparations, but Marcus, we need more than surprise. We need an advantage Corvus does not expect. We have one. Theron touched his chest over his heart. Rhea can feel my wolf. When we touch, she can sense the damage Corvus did. If she can sense that, maybe she can sense him, recognize the signature of his power. That is a guess. It is all we have. They stood in the armory, surrounded by weapons that could kill bodies but not curses, and made plans to face the monster who had made them both. King Hadrian called the war council for midnight. Not in the grand hall or any official chamber, but in a room deep in the castle's foundation, a place built during the old wars where kings met in secret to discuss matters too dangerous for other ears. Theron arrived first, with Marcus at his shoulder. Rhea came next, moving with the silent grace that marked her as Tommy's daughter. Isolde followed, pale and drawn, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. Hadrian entered last, closing and barring the heavy door behind him. Candles provided the only light. Shadows moved on the stone walls like living things. Marcus laid out what he had found, the coded message, the timing, the likelihood that one of Hadrian's own council was either Corvus or his agent. The northern king listened with a face like carved stone, aging visibly as the truth of his court's corruption settled over him. When Marcus finished, Hadrian spoke quietly. Owen has served me faithfully for 3 years. But if you are right, if he is the threat, what do you propose? A memorial service. Theron's voice was steady, public on the anniversary of Iron Wood. I will be there exposed, grieving. Corvus will not be able to resist. His hatred of me is personal. He will strike. And when he does, we end him. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken doubt. Isolde broke it, her voice thin. He will kill you. Maybe. Theron met her eyes. But I would rather fall fighting than pretending everything is fine. Rhea watched this exchange and felt pieces clicking into place. The memorial was 10 days away. Enough time to prepare, but not enough for Corvus to adjust his plans if he was truly committed to attacking on that specific date. It was clever. Dangerous, but clever. You need bait. She spoke before she could reconsider. Someone he will want to hurt. Someone connected to you but seemingly vulnerable. Everyone turned to look at her. Theron's expression was carefully neutral, but she saw the calculation in his eyes. He had already thought of this, had been waiting to see if she would offer. He killed your parents, Rhea. Theron's voice was gentle. If he discovers you are here, if he realizes you are the child he left alive, he might target you to finish what he started. I will not ask you to take that risk. You are not asking, I am offering. She held his gaze. My father rode to die beside you because he believed you were worth it. Let me finish what he started. This is not a debt you owe. It stopped being about debt when I learned the same monster haunts us both. Rhea's voice hardened. I want him dead. I want to look him in the eyes while he dies and know that he was wrong, that I was worth more than nothing. The admission hung in the air between them. Theron nodded slowly. Then we hunt together. Hadrian cleared his throat. If my daughter's guard is to be your bait, she will need to be protected. Backup, escape routes. Marcus already has that planned. Theron glanced at his beta. Tell them. Marcus unrolled a map of the castle grounds. The memorial will be held in the northern courtyard. Open space, multiple exits, high walls for archers. We position Rhea here, visible from 3 angles. Theron gives his speech from the central dais. When Corvus strikes, we have 30 guards hidden in the surrounding buildings. Another 20 in wolf form patrolling the perimeter. He cannot escape. Unless he is stronger than we expect. Isolde spoke softly. Unless he has been preparing for this confrontation as long as you have. Then we die trying. Marcus's tone allowed no argument, but we die fighting, not hiding. The plan was set. 10 days to prepare. 10 days for Rhea to train, for Marcus to position his forces, for Theron to ready himself for a confrontation that would either free him or kill him. As they filed out of the secret chamber, Isolde caught Rhea's arm. Her grip was weak, trembling. May I speak with you, alone? Rhea glanced at Theron. He nodded and left with Marcus and Hadrian, leaving the 2 women in the flickering candlelight. Isolde's composure cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks, silent and desperate. I need help. Rhea had seen Isolde cry before. The princess was kind but soft, easily moved to tears by sad stories or injured animals. But this was different. This was terror. What is wrong? I am pregnant. The words dropped like stones into still water. Rhea stared at the princess, understanding blooming like ice in her veins. How far along? 3 months, maybe 4. Isolde's hands shook as she pressed them to her stomach. I did not know at first, thought it was illness, but now I can feel it, feel him. Him? The baby and the father. She looked up with eyes gone hollow. Rhea, I can feel him in my head, whispering, telling me things, making me do things I do not remember doing. When did this start? 3 years ago. A man came to my chambers, said he was wounded, needed help. I brought him in. He thanked me with wine. I drank. Then nothing, just gaps. Months where I cannot remember what I did or said. I would wake up in strange places with no memory of how I got there. Did you tell anyone? Who would believe me? Isolde's voice broke. I am the princess who cries at nothing, who faints at blood, who everyone thinks is too soft for the crown. If I said I was being controlled, they would call it madness. Rhea thought about the council meeting, about the way Isolde had looked so pale and frightened, about the trembling hands and hollow eyes. The father, do you know who he is? His name, Isolde whispered it like a curse, Corvus Kane. Everything stopped. Rhea felt her heartbeat slow, felt the world narrow to this single moment of horrible understanding. Corvus forced a bond with you. Through the child. Isolde nodded. I can feel him through it. His thoughts bleeding into mine, his will replacing my own, and it is getting stronger. Soon I will not be able to fight it at all. What does he want you to do? Kill my father. Isolde's voice was barely audible. During the memorial, in front of everyone, blame it on the Southern Kingdom. Start a war that will destroy both our realms while Corvus rules the ashes. Rhea's mind raced. This changed everything. The memorial was not just bait for Corvus. It was the trigger for a plan years in the making, using Isolde as a weapon, using a forced pregnancy to bind her, using the bond between mother and child as a chain. We tell Theron immediately. No, Isolde grabbed her arm with surprising strength. If they know, they will lock me away, keep me from the memorial, and then Corvus will know we discovered his plan. He will change tactics, strike differently. You will lose your chance to catch him. So what do we do? You watch me. Rhea, please. During the memorial, stay close. If I move toward my father, if my eyes go empty, stop me. Restrain me. Kill me if you have to, but do not let him use me to destroy what little good remains in this world. Rhea looked at the princess, at the girl who had given her a home when she had nothing, who had defended her right to train when others mocked, who had shown kindness when the world offered only cruelty. I will not let him take you, I promise. Isolde pulled her into a fierce embrace. Thank you for believing me, for not thinking me mad. You are not mad. Rhea held her tight. You are strong, stronger than anyone knows, and we will free you. They held each other in the candle-lit chamber and pretended to believe the promises they made. The days passed in a blur of preparation. Marcus drilled the guards, positioned archers, planned sight lines and escape routes with the precision of someone who had lost 400 men and refused to lose anyone else. Theron trained with Rhea every morning, teaching her to read shifter movements, how they telegraphed attacks, where their strength lay and where it could be turned against them. Each session ended with him attempting to shift, and each time Rhea was there, hand on his shoulder, feeling the dark tangle of Corvus's curse wrapped around his wolf. On the 8th day, something changed. They were in the training yard at dawn. Theron lunged, Rhea deflected, and in the flow of combat his instincts took over. The shift began, but this time when Rhea touched his arm, she felt something different. Not the barbed wire strangling his wolf, not the pain and the breaking. Instead, she felt a thread, thin, fragile but real, a connection running from her through him to the trapped animal inside. She did not think, just reached along that thread and pulled. Theron's wolf surged forward, not all the way, not a full shift, but his eyes flashed gold and stayed gold, his canines elongated, claws pushed through his fingernails, a partial transformation, controlled, steady. For 3 full seconds, Theron held it, man and wolf in balance, neither one nor the other but both together. Then the thread snapped and he fell back into fully human form. But there was no pain, no breaking, just the smooth transition of a shift that worked the way it was supposed to. Theron stared at his hands, at Rhea, at Marcus, who had frozen mid-step on his way to intervene. What did you do? I do not know. Rhea was shaking. I felt you fighting it and I pulled. Pulled what? You, your wolf, both of you. She struggled to explain. Corvus's curse separates you, makes you fight each other. But when I touched you, I could feel both sides, so I held them together. Marcus approached slowly, like he was witnessing something fragile that might shatter if disturbed. Can you do it again? Theron looked at Rhea. There was wonder in his eyes, hope, the first real hope she had seen since they met. Will you try? She took his hand, focused on the thread she had felt, found it again, stronger now, more defined. She pulled and Theron's wolf rose to meet her. This time, he held the partial shift for 10 seconds. On the 9th day, Isolde collapsed during breakfast. Servants rushed to help her, but by the time they reached the princess, she was already awake again, eyes clear but terrified. He is close, she whispered to Rhea when they were alone. I can feel him. Tomorrow, it happens tomorrow. I will be ready. Promise me something. Isolde's fingers dug into Rhea's arm. If I succeed, if he makes me kill my father, do not let me live with that. End it quickly. Isolde. Promise. I promise. The lie tasted like ash, but Rhea told it anyway because sometimes mercy meant allowing people to believe their worst fears would not come to pass. The morning of the 10th day dawned cold and gray. Clouds hung low over the castle, pregnant with storms that had not yet broken. The northern courtyard filled slowly with citizens come to pay respects at a memorial for soldiers who had died defending a kingdom that was not their own. 400 names carved into stone, each one representing a life ended, a family destroyed, a future stolen. Theron stood at the central dais in formal mourning blacks. Marcus flanked him on the right, King Hadrian on the left. Princess Isolde sat in a chair of honor, her hands folded over her stomach in a gesture that might have been demure or protective. Rhea stood 10 paces behind the princess, close enough to intervene, far enough to seem like simple ceremony. Her eyes scanned the crowd constantly, looking for Owen, looking for any face that might resolve into the monster from her childhood. But everyone looked normal. Grieving citizens, curious onlookers, guards at their posts, nothing out of place. Theron began to speak. His voice carried across the courtyard, rough with emotion that was not feigned. He spoke of honor, of sacrifice, of men who had answered a call and paid the ultimate price. He named them, all 400. Read each name slowly, carefully, giving weight to lives that had ended too soon. Rhea watched Isolde, watched the princess's eyes grow distant, watched her hands begin to tremble. It was starting. Isolde stood, smoothly, too smoothly. Her movements had the quality of puppetry, of someone being operated from a distance. She walked toward her father with measured steps. Hadrian looked at his daughter, smiled, held out his hand. Isolde drew the dagger from her sleeve. Rhea moved, crossed the 10 paces in 3 running strides, tackled Isolde from the side just as the blade descended. They crashed to the stone in a tangle of limbs and fabric. The courtyard erupted, guards rushed forward, citizens screamed, but Rhea had eyes only for Isolde. The princess fought with strength that should not have been possible, pregnant, slight, soft, and yet she moved like a trained killer. The dagger came around in a sweeping arc aimed at Rhea's throat. Rhea blocked, twisted, slammed Isolde's wrist against the stone until fingers opened and the blade clattered away. Isolde, stop, this is not you. But the eyes that looked back at Rhea were not Isolde's. They were gold, predatory, ancient. Corvus's voice came from Isolde's mouth, deep, masculine, wrong. Clever girl, still not worth killing but clever. Where are you? Rhea hissed, show yourself. Why would I do that? Corvus laughed through Isolde's lips. When I can watch from perfect safety while everything Drake loves destroys itself. Isolde's hand shot out, faster than Rhea could track, grabbed the fallen dagger, but instead of attacking Rhea or Hadrian, Isolde raised the blade toward her own pregnant stomach. If I cannot have the child, Corvus's voice purred, no one will. Theron moved. His damaged body, his wounded wolf, his 3 years of failure, none of it mattered. He threw himself between the descending dagger and Isolde's stomach with the desperate speed of a man who had already lost too much. The silver blade sank into his shoulder, punched through muscle, grated against bone. Silver was poison to shifters, agony in physical form, and Theron's scream tore through the courtyard like thunder. Isolde dropped. Corvus's hold shattered as the shock of what had almost happened broke his concentration across whatever distance connected them. She collapsed sobbing, fully herself again, staring at the blood on her hands. Rhea was already moving. She caught Theron as he fell, his weight driving them both to their knees. Blood poured from the wound, too much blood. Silver prevented shifter healing. He could bleed out in minutes. Do not die. Her hands pressed against the wound, trying to stem the flow. Do not you dare die owing Tommy Brennan. Theron's eyes found hers, gold and brown swirling together. His wolf was there, surfacing despite the silver, despite the pain, because something deeper was calling. Tell Marcus, his voice was fading, tell him I am sorry. Tell him yourself. She did not think, did not plan, just acted on instinct older than thought. Rhea leaned down and kissed him. Not romance, not desire, life transfer. The old story said true mates could share strength, could anchor each other in moments of crisis. She had no idea if it was real, no idea if they were actually mates, but she had felt the thread between them had pulled his wolf to the surface, and maybe that was enough. Power slammed through her, the mate bond snapping into place with the force of destiny recognizing itself. She felt Theron's wolf roar awake, felt the silver burning him, felt everything all at once in a cascade of sensation that should have drowned her. Instead, she pulled his pain into herself, pulled his wolf toward the surface, pulled him back from the edge of death through sheer force of will. Theron's eyes went wide. The bond, he breathed, you are my mate. The silver wound began to heal, slowly, fighting the poison, but healing nonetheless because mate bonds purified, mate bonds strengthened, mate bonds made broken things whole. Rhea broke the kiss, stared at him, at the impossible thing that had just happened. Around them, the courtyard had descended into chaos. Guards securing Isolde, Hadrian shouting for healers, Marcus bellowing orders. But in their small pocket of stillness, two people who had been shaped by the same monster discovered they were meant to heal each other. What happens now? Rhea whispered. Theron's hand came up, cupped her face. Blood smeared across her cheek. Now we finish it. His voice was stronger. His eyes burned gold. For the first time in 3 years I can feel my wolf whole, and he is very, very angry. In the shadows at the edge of the courtyard, a man who looked like Owen the steward watched the scene unfold, watched the mate bond snap into place, watched Theron Drake rise to his feet with power thrumming through him that had been absent for 3 years. Corvus Kane smiled, stepped back into the darkness, vanished like smoke. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The healers worked through the night, but it was the mate bond that saved Theron's life. Rhea felt it humming between them like a living thing, a thread of power that drew poison from his wound and knitted flesh back together in defiance of the silver that should have killed him. She sat beside his bed in the guest chambers, her hand wrapped around his, and refused to let go even when exhaustion dragged at her like an anchor. Marcus stood guard at the door. He had not moved in 6 hours, had not spoken except to bark orders at servants bringing water or fresh bandages. The beta's face was carved from stone, but Rhea could see the terror lurking beneath the surface. 3 years ago, Marcus had watched Corvus break his king. Tonight, he had watched silver pierce Theron's heart, and no amount of tactical planning could defend against the fear that maybe this time, the breaking would be permanent. But Theron lived, the wound closed, the fever broke, and when dawn light spilled through the windows, he opened his eyes. The first thing he did was look for Rhea, found her still there, still holding his hand, dark circles under her eyes and hair falling loose from its braid. She looked like she had fought a battle and won it through sheer stubbornness. You stayed. His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. Rhea squeezed his hand. Did you think I would leave? I thought you might run. Theron tried to sit up, winced, settled back against the pillows. Finding out you are mated to a broken king is not exactly a prize. You are not broken, Not anymore. She felt it as she said it, the truth of it. The mate bond had not just healed his wound. It had begun to heal the deeper damage, the curse Corvus had laid 3 years ago. Theron's wolf was still there, still wounded, but no longer trapped. No longer screaming in silent agony every time it tried to surface. Theron looked at their joined hands, at the place where her skin met his and power flowed between them like water finding its level. I can feel him, my wolf. For the first time since Ironwood, he is not fighting me. Because you are not alone anymore. Rhea leaned forward. Whatever Corvus did, it worked by isolating you, making you fight yourself. But the bond connects us. And when you reach for your wolf now, I am there too, holding both pieces together. The door opened. Marcus entered carrying a sealed letter, his expression grim. He looked at Theron, saw him awake, and something in the beta's rigid posture eased fractionally. You look terrible. I feel worse. Theron managed a ghost of a smile, but I am alive thanks to her. Marcus glanced at Rhea, nodded once, the gesture heavy with meaning. You honored Tommy's memory. He would be proud. The words settled over Rhea like a benediction. She had spent 12 years trying to deliver her father's message, trying to repay a debt she had inherited without understanding its weight. And now, finally, she felt like maybe she had succeeded. What is the letter? Theron's gaze sharpened on the sealed parchment. It arrived an hour ago. Raven, black wax seal. Marcus set it on the bed, addressed to you. Theron broke the seal with steady fingers, read in silence. His face went carefully blank, the way it did when he was processing something too big to show. When he finished, he handed the letter to Rhea without a word. She read it twice, disbelief warring with rage. You found a mate. Clever, but can she survive what I have planned? Meet me at Ironwood. 3 days, bring her. If you do not, I burn the northern kingdom to ash, starting with the children. Your choice, her life or thousands. The debt comes due, boy. The signature was a simple C, slashed across the bottom like a wound. He is insane. Rhea set the letter down carefully, as if it might bite. He cannot possibly think you would walk into such an obvious trap. He knows I will. Theron's voice was flat because he is right. I cannot let innocence die to save myself, or you. So we go. Marcus crossed his arms, all 3 of us. Spring his trap on our terms. There is no good outcome to this. Theron looked between them. Either I refuse and he burns the kingdom, or I go and he kills us. Those are the only options he has given me. Then we make a third option. Rhea stood, pacing to the window. We go to Ironwood, but we do not go alone. We bring enough force that even Corvus cannot stand against us. He will see it coming. Marcus shook his head. The man spent 3 years planning this. You think he will not have contingencies? Theron watched Rhea pace, watched the fierce determination in every line of her body, and felt something shift in his chest. Not the mate bond, though that hummed between them constant as a heartbeat. This was older. The recognition of someone who would stand beside him not because they had to, but because they chose to. We go, his voice cut through the debate. Rhea and I, Marcus, you stay here. Coordinate with Hadrian. If this is a diversion, if Corvus is planning something else while we are gone, the kingdom needs you. Brother, Marcus's protest was immediate. That is an order. Theron met his beta's eyes. You are the only person I trust to protect what we leave behind. And if we do not come back, you are the only one who can hold the alliance together. The silence that followed was heavy with everything they could not say. 3 years of fighting side by side. 3 years of shared guilt and survival and brotherhood forged in the kind of fire that burned everything else away. Marcus's jaw worked, but finally he nodded. Do not make me bury you too. I will do my best." After Marcus left, Rhea returned to the bedside, sat down close enough that their shoulders touched. "You think he is lying about burning the kingdom?" "I think he is capable of anything." Theron's hand found hers again, seeking the connection that had become as necessary as breathing. "But I also think Marcus is right. This is too obvious, too direct. Corvus does not operate that way." "Then why go?" "Because he knows I cannot risk it, knows I will come even suspecting a trap. And because," Theron paused, "somewhere deep I think he wants to face me, wants to finish what he started." "You mean he wants to kill you in front of me?" "Perhaps, or perhaps he wants me to kill him." Theron's voice went distant. "I trained under Corvus for 15 years, learned everything from him. And one thing I know, he never does anything without layers. This letter, this threat, it serves multiple purposes. Drawing us out, yes, but also isolating us, making us vulnerable, testing whether the mate bond is real or just another weakness he can exploit." "What if it is both?" Rhea turned to face him fully. "Real and exploitable." "Then we make sure the reality is stronger than the weakness." They left at dawn the next morning. 2 horses, light packs, weapons secured. Theron moved stiffly, the silver wound still healing despite the mate bond's influence. Rhea watched him mount with the careful precision of someone managing pain, and felt the echo of it through their connection. King Hadrian and Princess Isolde stood in the courtyard to see them off. Isolde looked smaller somehow, diminished by what had been done to her. She met Rhea's eyes and mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." Rhea nodded. She had kept her promise, had stopped Isolde from killing her father, from murdering her unborn child. But the cost of that salvation showed in the princess's hollow eyes, in the way she held herself like something fragile that might shatter at any moment. Marcus appeared as they were preparing to ride through the gates. He approached Theron, spoke too quietly for anyone else to hear. Rhea saw Theron's hand grip his beta's shoulder, saw Marcus's fingers close over Theron's wrist. A warrior's clasp, a brother's farewell. Then they were riding north, leaving the castle behind. The first day passed in tense silence. They rode hard, pushing the pace, aware of the 3-day deadline but uncertain what waited at Ironwood. Theron's wolf hummed beneath his skin, restless but controlled. The mate bond helped. Rhea could feel it steadying him, giving him the anchor he needed to keep the shift at bay when it was not wanted. They made camp that night in a clearing far from roads, took turns at watch. When it was Rhea's turn to sleep, she found she could not. Too many thoughts racing, too many questions. "Tell me about Tommy." Theron's request came softly from where he sat against a fallen log. What was he like as a father? Rhea was quiet for a long moment, sorting through memories that still hurt to touch. "He was kind, patient. She watched flames dance. He taught me to track, to hunt, to read the forest. Said a Brennan should know the land like they know their own heartbeat." She smiled faintly. "He also taught me to fight, not formally, just basic defense. How to throw a punch without breaking my thumb, where to kick a man to drop him fast." "He was preparing you, even then." "I think so. After what happened to you, after he almost lost you to that training accident, he became careful. Paranoid, maybe. Like he knew danger could come from anywhere." She paused. "He never told me about you, though. Never mentioned Theron Drake. I wonder why." "Maybe because he knew mentioning me would make you a target." Theron's voice held old grief. If Corvus learned Tommy had a daughter, had someone he loved enough to protect, that would become leverage. "So he lied to protect me, erased his own past to keep me safe. And sent you to find me when he knew he was dying." Theron turned to look at her. "He must have trusted me completely to put you in my hands. Or he had no other choice." No, Theron's certainty was absolute. Tommy Brennan had choices. He always had choices. He chose me because he believed I would keep you safe, and I have been trying to honor that trust every day since." They sat in comfortable silence. Then Rhea moved to sit beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. The mate bond hummed between them, warm and steady. "I am afraid." Theron's admission came quietly. "Afraid that tomorrow, when we reach Ironwood, I will fail again. That the bond will not be enough. That I will lose you the way I lost everyone else. Then we will fail together." Rhea's voice was fierce. "But I do not think we will fail at all. I think Corvus is afraid of what we have become, afraid that his curse did not break you, it just taught you how to heal." On the morning of the second day, everything changed. They had been riding for perhaps 3 hours when Rhea spotted the raven. Not unusual in itself. Ravens were common in these forests, but this one circled overhead with purpose, following them, and when it finally dove, it came straight for Theron. Marcus's raven. Theron caught the bird with practiced ease, untied the message from its leg. "Read quickly." His face went white. "What?" Rhea moved her horse closer. "Castle under attack." Now, Owen revealed himself, guards dead. Isolde and Hadrian barricaded in throne room, Marcus engaging. The letter was dated yesterday evening, a full day ago. While they had been riding toward Ironwood, Corvus had struck at the castle. It was a diversion. Rhea felt ice flood her veins. The letter about Ironwood. It was meant to draw us away. Leaving the castle vulnerable. Theron was already wheeling his horse. "We are 2 days out. If we ride hard, we can make it back in a day and a half, maybe less." They rode like the dead were chasing them, pushed the horses to the edge of endurance, walking them only when collapse seemed imminent. They did not speak, did not stop except when absolutely necessary. The mate bond thrummed between them, fear and determination flowing both ways. By nightfall, they had covered what should have taken a day and a half. Theron's wolf gave him stamina beyond human limits, and the bond allowed Rhea to draw on that strength. They rode through the night, taking turns sleeping in the saddle, trusting the horses and each other to keep them moving. Dawn of the third day found them within sight of the castle. Smoke rose from several towers. The main gate stood open, damaged. Bodies littered the courtyard, guards and servants alike, torn apart with the methodical brutality of something that enjoyed killing. Theron shifted without thinking. His wolf surged forward, rage and fear driving him, and this time the transformation was perfect. Fluid, complete. He hit the ground running, a dark blur of fur and fury. Rhea followed, weapons drawn, heart hammering. They burst through the gates into controlled chaos. Hadrian's remaining guards had formed a defensive line at the throne room. Behind them, she could hear screaming. "Where is Marcus?" Theron's voice was rough with the partial shift, caught between man and wolf. One of the guards pointed toward the east wing, the healer's quarters. Owen took him there, said he would make the beta watch while he killed the princess. Theron ran. Rhea matched him stride for stride. They crashed through doors, pounded down corridors slick with blood, following the sound of combat deeper into the castle. They found them in the old chapel. Marcus lay on the stone floor, body twisted at angles that spoke of poison or paralysis. Blood seeped from a dozen shallow cuts across his chest and arms. Not killing blows, torture. Owen stood over him, except it was not Owen anymore. The careful disguise had slipped. The steward's face rippled and reformed, showing the truth beneath. A man in his 50s, powerfully built, with scars running down his left forearm and eyes that shifted from brown to gold to something in between. Corvus Kane smiled at them. "Welcome back. You made excellent time." "Get away from him." Theron's voice came out as a growl. "This is between us." "Is it?" Corvus tilted his head. "I seem to recall your mate's father bleeding out on my claws. That makes it between all of us." "He killed Tommy." Marcus's voice was barely a whisper, each word forced through paralyzed lungs. "Made me watch. Made me choose between saving Tommy or saving you. I chose you. And Tommy died hating me for it." "Tommy died a hero." Theron did not take his eyes off Corvus. "And you survived because I needed you. Needed someone who understood the cost of command." Corvus laughed. How touching. The broken king and his guilty beta. And now the wolf whisperer's daughter completes the set. "Tell me, Rhea, do you know why your mother really died?" Rhea's hands tightened on her daggers. "You killed her." "I liberated her." Corvus's smile widened. "Your mother was a woman of power, could calm wild wolves with a song, make them obey with a whisper. And the kingdoms feared that power, tried to bind her, control her, use her as a weapon. She refused, ran, and I found her." "You forced her." "I offered her partnership, rule beside me, burn the kingdoms that tried to cage us both." Corvus stepped over Marcus like he was furniture. "She refused, so I took what she would not give freely, her power, her life. And I left you alive because I knew someday, when you had grown into your mother's gifts, I would come back and finish what I started." Rhea felt ice flood her veins. "My mother had power." "The same power you used to help Drake shift. The same power singing in your blood right now." Corvus's eyes gleamed. "You are more valuable than you know, child. And when I kill your precious mate, when I break him again in front of you, that power will finally break free. Grief does that, unlocks what fear keeps caged." "Then you will have to kill me first." Rhea stepped forward. "And I do not break." "We will see." Corvus shifted. The transformation was wrong, too fast, bones cracking and reforming with sounds like gunshots. When it finished, the wolf that stood there was massive, black as midnight, twice the size of any natural wolf. Theron shifted to meet him. His own wolf rose, sleek and dark and finally whole. They circled each other, two apex predators in a space too small to contain their rage. Isolde was there too. Rhea suddenly noticed her, huddled in the corner with arms wrapped around her pregnant belly, face streaked with tears. She had fought. Rhea could see the defensive wounds on her arms, the ripped fabric of her dress. But she was still alive. Rhea wanted to help Theron, wanted to fight beside him. But Marcus was bleeding out on the floor and Isolde was sobbing in the corner, and someone had to protect them. She made her choice, moved to Marcus's side, knelt. His eyes found hers. "Poison silver in my veins, paralyzed." "How long?" "Hours," he coughed. Watched him torture Isolde, could not move, could not stop him. "You are alive. That is what matters." Behind her, Theron and Corvus collided. The impact shook the chapel. Fangs tore, claws raked. Blood sprayed across ancient stone. They fought with the viciousness of old betrayal, teacher and student, father and son, in all the ways that mattered and none of the ways that should. Theron was faster, younger, fueled by 3 years of rage, but Corvus was older, stronger, and he knew every move Theron would make because he had taught him those moves. Isolde appeared at Rhea's side, helped her lift Marcus, drag him toward the wall where he would be out of the immediate line of fire. The princess's hands shook, but her face was set with determination. "I will not be helpless again." Isolde's voice was steady despite the tears. "Tell me what to do." "Keep pressure on his wounds. Do not let him bleed out." "And you?" "I stopped the monster." Rhea stood, turned back to the battle. Corvus had Theron pinned, jaws closing toward his throat. Theron twisted, broke free, but not before fangs scored his shoulder. the same shoulder where silver had pierced days before. Theron yelped. The wound reopened, bleeding freely. The mate bond flared with his pain, and Rhea felt it like her own injury. She could not fight a full-grown shifter in wolf form. She was human, fragile, but she had her mother's gift, whatever that was, and she had the mate bond singing in her blood like fire. Rhea started humming, not consciously, just a melody that rose from somewhere deep in her bones, a song her mother had sung when she was small, a lullaby that had always made her feel safe. The effect was immediate. Corvus faltered, his ears flattened, his movements became less sure, not weakened but distracted, like something in the song pulled at him against his will. Theron seized the opening, lunged, caught Corvus's throat in his jaws and held on. They crashed to the ground in a tangle of fur and fury. Theron's weight drove Corvus down. His jaws tightened. Blood flowed hot and dark. But Corvus was not finished. With a surge of strength, he threw Theron off, shifted mid-motion back to human form, grabbed a piece of broken stone from the floor. Silver veins ran through it, remnants of the old chapel's protective wards. He drove the stone into Theron's side. Silver burned into flesh. Theron howled and fell, unable to maintain his shift. He collapsed back into human form, naked and bleeding and gasping. Corvus stood over him, human again, smiling through blood-stained teeth, just like iron wood. You fall, I win. Everyone you love dies screaming. Rhea moved without thinking. The silver boundary that protected the chapel's altar was active, designed to keep dark powers at bay, designed to burn anyone with shifter blood who tried to cross it. She ran straight through it. The pain was immediate and catastrophic. Silver did not discriminate. It burned human flesh just as readily as shifter if the concentration was high enough. Rhea screamed, kept running, grabbed a silver candlestick from the altar with hands that blistered and blackened. Corvus turned, saw her coming, raised his hand to shift again. Rhea drove the candlestick through his chest like a spear. Silver and flesh met. Silver won. Corvus staggered back, shock clear on his face. He looked down at the metal protruding from his ribs, looked up at Rhea with something that might have been respect. Your mother, he coughed blood, would be proud. Then he fell. Rhea collapsed beside him. Her hands were ruined, burned down to bone in places. The silver poison was already spreading up her arms, racing toward her heart. She could feel it, feel herself dying. Worth it, the thought came distant, floating. Theron is safe. Strong arms caught her. Theron, still bleeding from his own wounds, cradled her against his chest. The mate bond flared desperately, trying to heal her, but silver was silver and there were limits to what even true love could overcome. Stay with me, Theron's voice broke. Please, I just found you. Corvus, Rhea forced the word out, dead. Theron looked. Corvus lay still, eyes staring at nothing. The silver candlestick had pierced his heart. No shifter, no matter how powerful, could survive that. Dead, Theron confirmed. You killed him. Good. Rhea's eyes closed. The pain was fading now, which she knew meant the poison was winning. From somewhere far away, she heard Isolde screaming for healers, heard Marcus trying to drag himself closer despite his paralysis, heard Theron begging her to hold on. She tried, but silver was silver, and she was so very tired. The healers arrived. They worked through the day and into the night, drew poison from Rhea's veins drop by agonizing drop, wrapped her ruined hands in bandages soaked with herbs and magic, gave her drafts that dulled the pain but could not erase it. Theron never left her side. He held her through the worst of it, the mate bond open and bleeding, sharing what strength he could. Marcus, recovering slowly from his own silver poisoning, sat vigil at the foot of the bed. Isolde brought food and water neither of them touched. On the third day, Rhea's fever broke. She opened her eyes to find Theron asleep in the chair beside her bed, their hands still joined despite the bandages. He looked exhausted, older, but whole. She squeezed his hand. He jerked awake instantly, eyes wild until they found her face. "You came back. Did you think I would leave?" Rhea's voice was rough from screaming. "After everything, did you think I would quit now?" "I thought I might lose you." Theron's hand trembled in hers. "When you ran through that silver barrier, when you picked up that candlestick, I thought my heart would stop." "Had to, he was going to kill you. You nearly died saving me." "But I did not die." Rhea tried to sit up, winced, settled back. "And Corvus is gone. After 12 years, the monster is finally dead. Thanks to you." Theron leaned forward, pressed his forehead to hers. "You avenged your parents, saved my life, freed Marcus and Isolde. You did what 400 soldiers could not. We did it together." The door opened. Marcus entered, moving slowly but under his own power. The silver was leaving his system. He would heal. Behind him, Isolde appeared, one hand on her belly. "You are awake." Isolde's smile was genuine, the first real joy Rhea had seen on the princess's face in weeks. "Thank the gods." "How long?" Rhea asked. 3 days. Marcus settled into a chair. "You have been unconscious, fighting the poison." "And Corvus?" "Burned." Marcus's voice held grim satisfaction. "We built a pyre, reduced him to ash, scattered the ashes in iron wood. He will not be coming back." Isolde stepped closer. "I owe you everything. My life, my child's life, my father's." She touched Rhea's bandaged hand gently. "Whatever you need for as long as you live, you have only to ask." "I just need to heal." Rhea looked at Theron. "And then I need to go south." "South?" Isolde's brow furrowed. Theron took a breath. "Rhea is my mate. Confirmed. Acknowledged. I am taking her home to present her to my kingdom as queen." The silence that followed was heavy. Isolde looked between them, understanding dawning. "The alliance will need to be renegotiated." Theron met her eyes. "I am sorry. I know this disrupts your father's plans." "My father's plans nearly got us all killed." Isolde's voice was firm. "Corvus played us. Used the marriage arrangement to position himself, to get close enough to destroy everything. If you had married me, he would have used that too." She shook her head. "No, I think this is better. A true alliance. Not born from forced unions, but from shared survival." "Your father may not agree." "Then I will convince him." Isolde straightened. "I am done being the soft princess who lets others make choices for her. Corvus tried to make me a weapon. Instead, he taught me what I am capable of. My father will listen, or he will learn that his daughter has teeth." Marcus snorted. "Sounds like someone I know." He looked at Rhea. "Tommy would approve of you, both of you." The words settled over the room like a benediction. Thomas Brennan, who had given his life so that others might live, whose sacrifice had rippled outward, touching everyone in this room, binding them together in ways none of them could have predicted. 6 months passed. Marcus made a full recovery, though he carried scars from the silver that would never fully fade. He was named Lord Commander of the Joint Kingdoms, tasked with maintaining the new alliance forged not in marriage, but in blood and battle. Isolde gave birth to a daughter, a perfect, healthy girl with her mother's blonde hair and eyes that shifted gold when she cried. Hadrian adopted the child formally, named her Rhea Isolde Ashford, and declared her his heir. The circumstances of her conception were buried. Only 4 people knew the truth, and none of them would ever speak it. Rhea's hands healed, slowly. The burn scarred, leaving her palms and fingers marked with silver lines that would never fade. But she could hold a sword again, could fight, could touch Theron without flinching. The coronation was held at Ironwood, not in a throne room or grand hall, but at the memorial where 400 men had died and one king had been broken and remade. They cleared the center, built a dais from the same stone used to mark the graves. Theron stood before his people, before the representatives from kingdoms north and south, and spoke. "We are all survivors of wars we did not choose." His voice carried across the assembled crowd. "But we choose what we build after. Today I crown a woman who taught me that strength is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear choose for you. Rhea Brennan, daughter of Thomas Brennan, my mate, my partner, my queen." He placed the crown on her head. Simple iron worked with silver, forged from the weapons used to kill Corvus. A reminder of cost, a promise of strength. The crowd roared approval. Rhea stood beside Theron, scarred hands visible for all to see, and felt the weight of what she had become. Not the terrified child hiding in a cupboard, not the orphan survivor desperate to prove her worth, but someone whole, someone complete. After the ceremony, after the feasting and speeches and congratulations, Rhea and Theron walked to Tommy Brennan's grave. They knelt together at the simple stone marker. Theron placed something at the grave's base, an iron wolf statue, small enough to hold in one hand, detailed enough to show individual fur and muscle. The eyes were silver, catching the light. "Your daughter saved my life." Theron's voice was quiet. "Saved my kingdom. Saved me from becoming the monster grief wanted me to be." He paused. "The debt is paid, brother. And then some." Rhea touched the iron wolf, felt the weight of her father's sacrifice, felt the love that had driven him to ride into certain death so that others might live. He would be proud. She spoke to the stone, to the memory, to the ghost she carried in her heart, of both of us. Theron's hand found hers, squeezed gently. "What now?" She asked the question that had been building since the coronation. "Now we live." Theron pulled her to her feet. "We build. We honor the dead by refusing to join them. We rule together. We protect what we have built. We become the leaders our people deserve." "Sounds like a good plan." Rhea smiled. "My king." "Our plan," Theron corrected, "my queen." They walked back toward the waiting crowd. Behind them, the iron wolf watched over Tommy Brennan's grave with silver eyes that gleamed in the fading light. A memorial to sacrifice. A promise that some debts once paid became something more. They became legacy. And in the Southern Kingdom, a new era began. Not perfect, not without cost, but earned through blood and pain and the kind of love that refused to break even when breaking would have been easier. Theron and Rhea ruled together. Marcus stood at their right hand. And somewhere in the north, a child who carried a monster's blood but her mother's courage learned to walk, to talk, to grow into someone who would one day forge her own path. The cycle continued, but this time it continued in light instead of shadow. This time the monsters lost, and the survivors built something beautiful from the ashes.